If you like what I do, consider joining my channel or donating to my coffee. Links in the description.
Hell excuses, right hand on the Bible. God can strike me down if I'm lying. That motherfucker's cheating! Take my word!
Alruna and the Necro-Industrialists was a huge surprise for me when it dropped in 2024. I went in expecting a cute Game Boy Color-inspired Metroidvania, and instead got a communist manifesto stitched together with metal and nu metal lyrics, wrapped in a cute Game Boy Color-inspired Metroidvania. But even more surprising was how the game was formatted. Alruna and the Necro-Industrialists, in strictly scientific terms, was punk as f***. It didn't just give you the freedom of a non-linear experience. No, it gave you the freedom to absolutely break it. I'm talking hidden shortcuts that skip huge chunks of the game, secret techniques that blow utility gates off their hinges, and a general disregard for the standard Metroidvania formula. The game's penchant for hiding things in plain sight and leaning into knowledge gating like a Metroidvania was incredibly refreshing, especially for a 3 to 4 hour adventure. Well, 3 to 4 hours if you don't know the tricks. The original Alruna is a speedrunner's wet dream. So when the sequel, Alruna: The End of History, dropped with its new widescreen format, it was a no-brainer. This time, you return as Alruna, now sporting a cute new haircut, and she's tasked with saving a fellow dryad from martyring herself for a world that may not be worth saving. Will you be the savior of the broken, beaten, and the damned? Or is this an adventure not worth waking up, grabbing a brush, and putting on a little makeup for?
Combat.
In her latest adventure, Alruna trades her Vine Whip for the Blossom Blaster, a short-range, 8-directional projectile. And that's pretty much the basics of combat. Point at something, press attack, and keep blasting until it stops moving. Most enemies aren't aggressive and are more like moving obstacles, so once you learn their patterns, they go down pretty easy. Where the sequel really diverges from the original is in its elemental blossoms. These temporary power-ups give Alruna a big damage boost and add puzzle utility. The ice/water blossom douses flames, the fire blossom lights torches, and so on. But they're fragile. Take a hit, and Alruna reverts to her neutral self. It's no big deal. Until you need that element for a puzzle, and suddenly enemy placement and routing matter a whole lot more. As for bosses, they're mostly all bark, no bite. I don't think I died once to a boss. Well, that's not true. There was one boss that took me a few tries, but other than it, the other bosses were pretty much a cakewalk. Most of them I basically tank and spanked. But if you saw my cold open, you'd know I found an AFK exploit to get the game's upgrading currency. So maxing out Alruna pretty early probably contributed to the boss's easiness. I will say all the bosses looked really cool, and personally, I'll take cool looking bosses over punishing ones in my MVs any day. I don't really like tough bosses blocking me from exploration. That's it for combat. Combat's simple, serviceable, and mostly there to support the game's puzzle and exploration-driven identity. The Blossom Blaster handles the moment-to-moment encounters, Elemental Blossoms add short bursts of utility and power, and bosses lean more towards spectacle than challenge. It's not a system built to test your reflexes, it's a system built to keep you moving, thinking, and exploring without getting bogged down. And for a game this focused on traversal and world logic, that approach scans just fine.
Abilities. Platforming.
Much like the original Alruna, End of History has some knowledge-based tricks up its sleeve, so I won't be discussing any of that. What I will say is, if you played the first Alruna, then you already know some of the tools in Alruna's kit and how they can be used to navigate this world. But there's also a whole host of new abilities to discover, and each skill is fun, practical and sorta broken in terms of traversal options, and you like to see it. As for abilities you unlock through game progression, seeds make a return. You choose a seed with the bumpers and then throw them to use them. You have a seed that creates climbable vines and pumpkin bombs. Seeds aren't nearly as cool and versatile as they were in the first game, but there are some surprises here, like a late game seed that is equal parts awesome, goofy, and broken. As for the moment-to-moment platforming, Alruna feels pretty good to use. And there are a lot of hidden paths, puzzles, and gimmicks to make biomes feel distinctive and fun. Biomes in End of History feel much more like dungeons, so expect to find keys and solve puzzles in order to progress. And that's it for this section. Abilities and platforming in End of History lean hard into creativity and discovery with plenty of moments where you'll be like, I could do that the whole time? Returning tools mixed with a batch of new, delightfully busted abilities that open the world in fun, unexpected ways, while seeds provide a more traditional progression layer with a few clever surprises of their own. Moment-to-moment movement feels smooth, and each biome's dungeon-like structure, complete with keys, puzzles, and hidden routes, keeps traversal engaging from start to finish.
Progression.
End of History's character progression can be summed up in a single phrase. Upgrade Castle. During your journeys, you'll eventually find a warp to the Upgrade Castle, and in this castle are a bevy of upgrades you can purchase. And sometimes you have to purchase to unlock the path to the upgrade, but I'll leave you to figure all that out. Basically, you can collect currency while exploring, and you use this currency for extra health, faster climbing speed, to increase the frequency of health drops, and a whole lot more that are much more exciting and unique. And I'll leave it at that for progression. There's no gear, no items to collect to increase stats, no XP, leveling, or skill trees. You find the currency and bring it to the Upgrade Castle. It's simple, and to keep the game's motif, some of the more interesting upgrades are completely broken. And even more interesting is that you can upgrade the Upgrade Castle to get more upgrades. So, keep your eyes peeled.
Exploration.
Exploration in End of History takes a more traditional Metroidvania approach than the original. As fun and busted as Alruna's new abilities can be, the world you're using them in is far more linear, with fewer of the wild, game-breaking shortcuts that defined the Necro-Industrialists. Though there's still room for clever players looking to play the game out of order. But at its core, this is a more classic MV, just one with enough quirky traversal options to keep things feeling lively. Does this make exploration in End of History less interesting than in the Necro-Industrialists? I suppose in a way, but End of History's exploration is still good and might even be better for gamers who'd rather have a more traditional MV experience. Regardless, I don't want to spend the entire section comparing the two games. End of History is a great standalone experience with rewarding exploration, though personally, I enjoy finding hidden upgrades out in the world more than buying upgrades at the Upgrade Castle. It's true you still have to find the currency hidden out in the world, and the Upgrade Castle does allow you autonomy in how you upgrade, and people may like that. And I guess I devalued all that when I found that exploit. Oops. But in all fairness, I guarantee that exploit was placed there intentionally. When it comes to the world structure, as stated earlier, biomes are less like organic areas you revisit multiple times and more like dungeons you can one and done, given you're observant and know all the game's tricks. There still might be moments when you have to revisit an area because you didn't know something, and there are a few optional areas and biomes with special rewards and boss encounters waiting for those who dare to delve deeper. The in-game map is solid, blocky, simple, but color-coded and clear with automatic markers for points of interest. There's technically no fast travel, but there are a couple of warps. Just don't expect a full network. Thankfully, the world is compact and full of shortcuts, so backtracking never turns into a slog. And that's it for exploration. Exploration in End of History may be more structured than its predecessor, but it still delivers a rewarding loop. The world trades wild sequence breaks for tighter, dungeon-like biomes, supported by a clean map, smart shortcuts, and just enough optional areas to reward curiosity. Even if the upgrade castle shifts some of the thrill away from finding upgrades in the wild, the act of navigating, observing, and uncovering the game's tricks remains satisfying. It's a more traditional Metroidvania at heart, but one that still gives clever players room to play, poke, and occasionally break things. Exactly the kind of exploration Alruna thrives on.
Atmosphere. Narrative.
End of History keeps the Game Boy Color aesthetic, but stretches it across a widescreen canvas, giving it a modern presentation without losing the charm of that era's color and animation limitations. Sprites are big and full of personality, with background assets popping with grandeur and detail. Fair warning, the game unironically uses corn lyrics as dialogue, along with lyrics from a bunch of other nu metal and alt bands. And also, a lot of what you'll see and hear in this game openly mocks the Christian faith. If that's a deal breaker, this might not be your game, but the soundtrack absolutely goes hard. Alruna's theme returns from the original, and it's still fire. The narrative, for all its blasphemy, is reaching for something surprisingly sincere. It echoes the idea that God helps those who help themselves, but strips it down to a secular core. There's no nihilism here, just a push toward creating meaning and love in the world you actually inhabit. The game briefly covers themes it introduced in the first game, like its environmental messaging and
F***ing commie gobbledygook.
But the main theme and ending land on a humanist note about agency and connection, and it's punk as fuck. If I had one disappointment, it's that the game only offers a single ending, and it's a downer. The story and mechanics are solid. It's just an emotional dip that closes with the ending line from one of my favorite poems. It's a bold send-off that feels personal, and I'm glad I got to experience it, even if I found it tonally confusing. But that's the beautiful thing about art. You don't always have to understand everything through reason. Sometimes feeling is the understanding.
Final thoughts and score.
Alruna, The End of History is a tightly crafted adventure that thrives on clever ideas, great art, and a world that constantly rewards curiosity. Its combat is simple, its progression is a bit convoluted but interesting nonetheless, and its structure is compact, but the game makes up for that with charm, creativity, and a surprising amount of heart. Even when the story takes a heavier turn, the experience as a whole feels intentional, personal, and worth seeing through. I award Alruna End of History an 8 out of 10. Alruna End of History is available on PC. I played it exclusively on the Steam Deck with 0 issues, and therefore give it a Steam Deck rating of verified.
Fair placement.
Alruna, The End of History is a compact, clever, traversal-driven adventure that uses its mechanics to reshape how you move, discover, and break its world. Its combat is light, its progression is odd but fun, and its structure is more guided than its predecessor, but the game excels in the places that matter most for Metroidvania's identity. The toolkit is expressive, the routing is thoughtful, the world is dense with secrets, and the dev clearly wants you to poke around until something snaps. It may not reach the anarchic heights of the first game, but it still delivers a satisfying loop of ability-driven exploration, knowledge-based progression, and just broken enough traversal tech to keep you satisfied. Alruna, End of History, feels like a freak on a leash in the B tier. Alruna End of History is a much more traditional Metroidvania that plays it a bit safer than its predecessor, which might be a boon for Metroidvaniers who like more conventional takes on the genre. If you like what you saw, give the game a shot. There's no doubt the experience will be crawling in your skin. You'll definitely feel it from the inside. You'll Ghost. I ain't quoting that shit.